Y a mí era porque jugaba en el Marsella, era Enzo Francescoli.
Ah, verdad, escuché muchas veces, sí.
Sí.
Bueno, incluso uno de tus hijos se llama.
Sí, Enzo se llama por Enzo. Y bueno, cuando lo vi digo, yo quiero ser esto. Porque, ¿sabes? Era muy elegante, muy, ¿sabes? Como jugaba, como manejaba la pelota también.
Enzo Francescoli was born in 1961 in the Capuro neighborhood of Montevideo. Along with his brother Luis, a young Enzo developed his first touch not in academies, but on the unforgiving streets where creativity was as necessary as technique. The improvisational style forged in these informal matches would become his trademark. While studying at a Salesian school, Francescoli's natural talent earned him trials at South American giants Peñarol and River Plate in Argentina. Eventually, Francescoli made his decisive step into professional football. In his final year of high school, the Uruguayan signed with Montevideo Wanderers, not the glamorous powerhouse one might expect for a future legend, but a modest club that would prove the perfect canvas for his developing artistry. At Wanderers, necessity became the mother of invention. With their youth team perpetually short-staffed, Francescoli was forced to play multiple positions, inadvertently developing the versatile skill set and 360-degree awareness that would later define his genius. His emergence coincided with a golden era for the number 10 role across South America and Europe, a time when Platini orchestrated in France, Zico dazzled for Brazil, and Maradona began his ascent in Argentina. Yet even among these luminaries, Francescoli crafted a distinctive elegance that would catch the eye of a football-obsessed boy in Marseille named Zinedine Zidane. What separated El Príncipe from his contemporaries wasn't just technique, but a cerebral approach that made the difficult appear effortless, precisely the quality that would later define Zidane's own mastery. The 1983 Copa America proved to be Francescoli's inauguration. At just 21 years old, on the continental stage where legends are forged, El Príncipe announced himself with a performance that would echo through generations. Uruguay topped their group with methodical efficiency. The two-legged final against Brazil. South American football's perennial superpower presented the ultimate test. But that's where Francescoli's genius truly surfaced. In the cauldron of Montevideo. With the weight of a nation's expectations bearing down, Francescoli rose to the occasion. He opened the scoring with a goal that combined technical precision with artistic flair, setting the tone for Uruguay's commanding 2-0 victory. The return leg saw Brazil desperate to overturn the deficit, but Francescoli's composure helped secure a 1-1 draw and Uruguay's first continental triumph in 16 years. As he lifted the trophy under the Brazilian night sky, the football world took notice. The tournament's organizing committee merely confirmed what spectators already knew, naming Francescoli player of the tournament. El Príncipe was no longer just a nickname, it was now a fitting title for Uruguayan royalty. This performance, combining grace under pressure with decisive impact, embodied precisely the qualities that would later draw a young Zidane to videotapes of Francescoli's matches, studying his movements like sacred texts. He was renowned for his exceptional ball control, dribbling skills, and agility. These qualities allowed him to maneuver effectively in tight spaces and maintain possession under pressure. Francescoli possessed excellent vision, which enabled him to pick out precise passes that could unlock defenses. His passing range was impressive, allowing him to execute both short and long-range passes with accuracy. As an attacking midfielder or second striker, he brought creativity to the game with his fluid movement on the ball. Francescoli's elegant style of play was characterized by grace and fluidity on the pitch. Despite lacking notable pace, he compensated with superior technique and intelligence. All of this is why was he compared to the legends of that era. Fresh from his Copa triumph, Francescoli finally answered the call of destiny when River Plate, who had first scouted him as a teenager, secured his signature. What followed was not an immediate explosion, but a deliberate ascent that revealed his rare football intelligence. Despite what observers might have described as a relatively low-key beginning to his Argentine adventure, Francescoli's subtle brilliance couldn't be contained as he was crowned 1984 South American Player of the Year. Recognition that his impact transcended conventional statistics. It was the 1985 season, however, when El Príncipe fully unfurled his royal standard. Defying the traditional constraints of his midfield role, Francescoli unleashed an unprecedented scoring prowess, netting 24 goals to claim the Primera Division scoring title, a remarkable achievement for a player whose primary gift was creation rather than conversion. More significantly, he shattered cultural barriers by becoming the first non-Argentine to win the country's coveted Player of the Year award, a testament to how completely he had captured the imagination of South America's most demanding football audience. Rather than resting on these laurels, Francescoli elevated his game further in the 1985-86 campaign, once again leading the scoring charts with 25 goals. This time, his brilliance didn't merely bring individual accolades, but also sealed the league title for River Plate. This period of domination, establishing himself as both creator and finisher, showcased precisely the positional fluidity and technical versatility that would later become hallmarks of Zidane's approach. Not only had Francescoli conquered the Argentine domestic scene, but 1986 presented the ultimate stage for his talents, the World Cup in Mexico. At last, the football world would witness El Príncipe measured against the game's true aristocracy. The 1986 World Cup stands as perhaps the greatest gathering of number 10s in football history, a constellation of creative geniuses who defined an era. Argentina possessed the incandescent Diego Maradona, whose divine hand and left foot would dominate headlines. Brazil showcased the technically immaculate Zico. France moved to the rhythm of the elegant Michel Platini. Denmark unleashed the unpredictable brilliance of Preben Elkjær. Among these luminaries stood Uruguay's crown jewel, Enzo Francescoli, carrying the dreams of a nation on his slender shoulders. Uruguay's campaign, however, would unfold as a tragedy rather than triumph. The team quickly earned notoriety for their brutality, setting an unwanted record when José Alberto Batista saw red after just 56 seconds against Scotland, the fastest dismissal in World Cup history. A humbling 6-1 defeat to Denmark's swashbuckling side exposed the limitations of Uruguay's approach, though they still managed to scrape into the knockout stages. Their journey ended against continental rivals and eventual champions Argentina, led by Maradona at the peak of his powers. The inevitable lure of European football finally beckoned. Like many South American stars before him, Francescoli faced the choice that would define his legacy: remain a continental legend or test his artistry on the game's most demanding stages. In 1986, with his reputation at its peak, El Príncipe made the transatlantic journey, but not to one of the traditional powerhouses. Instead, he joined Racing Club Paris, an ambitious project in the French capital looking to challenge the established order. France, of course, was where a 14-year-old Zinedine Zidane was developing his own footballing identity in the streets of Marseille. As Francescoli adapted to the tactical rigors and physical demands of European football, his elegant solutions to these new challenges were being studied intently by his young admirer. The Uruguayan's first season proved his class was universal, as he netted 14 goals, an impressive return for a midfielder adjusting to a new footballing culture. More than the statistics, it was his manner of playing that captivated French audiences. The balletic movements, the feather-like first touch, the ability to find space where none seemed to exist, qualities that would later become synonymous with Zidane himself. For the teenage Zidane, watching Francescoli operate in the familiar settings of French football created an immediate connection, a template for how technique and intelligence could overcome physical limitations at the highest level. While adapting to European football, Francescoli's heart remained tied to the sky blue jersey of Uruguay. The 1987 Copa America offered a perfect stage for redemption, with Uruguay granted automatic passage to the semi-finals as defending champions. For Francescoli, this tournament represented more than just another trophy hunt. It was a chance to exorcise the demons of Mexico, to remind the world that Uruguayan football stood for more than just brutality. The semi-final draw couldn't have scripted a more perfect narrative. A showdown with Argentina, the reigning world champions, led by Maradona, whose individual brilliance had overshadowed Francescoli on the global stage a year earlier. On this hallowed turf that knew his every movement, El Príncipe orchestrated a tactical masterclass. Uruguay's 1-0 victory wasn't just a triumph of discipline over flair. It was Francescoli's personal statement that his artistry could coexist with winning at the highest level. The final against Chile offered less glamour but equal pressure. Once again, Uruguay's captain led by example, guiding his team to another 1-0 victory and securing back-to-back Copa America titles. As Francescoli lifted the trophy, he had completed a personal narrative arc from World Cup disappointment to continental dominance. Juventus came calling during the 1987-88 season, seeing in Francescoli the perfect heir to Michel Platini's throne in Turin. The symmetry would have been poetic, one graceful number 10 replacing another, continuing the lineage of midfield artistry at the Old Lady. Yet Francescoli, embodying the loyalty that defined him throughout his career, declined the prestigious approach. His commitment to Racing Club was rewarded with adoration rather than silverware, and as a final act of devotion, he orchestrated their escape from relegation in his third and final season. Through these challenging campaigns, Francescoli's brilliance never dimmed, finishing as the club's leading scorer each season, defying the conventional limitations of his midfield role. By 1989, however, even Francescoli's loyalty had its limits. When French powerhouse Olympique Marseille presented an offer, the allure of Champions League football and domestic titles proved irresistible. As he moved south to the Mediterranean coast, Francescoli could not have known that his arrival would ignite the imagination of a teenage boy in the city's northern quarters. In the stands of the Stade Velodrome, among the passionate Marseille faithful, sat a young Zinedine Zidane, absorbing every touch, every turn, every moment of inspiration from the Uruguayan. This cosmic intersection of paths, Francescoli at his peak, Zidane in his formative years, would create a chain of influence that would reshape football's future. The Uruguayan's single season in Marseille would leave an indelible mark, not primarily through trophies or statistics, but through the creative spark he ignited in a future legend who watched from the terraces with wide-eyed wonder. What specifically drew Zidane to Francescoli? Perhaps it was their shared physical attributes. Neither relied on overwhelming strength or blistering pace, instead navigating the field through intelligence and technique. Perhaps it was Francescoli's otherworldly first touch that seemed to magnetize the ball to his foot, or his 360-degree awareness that transformed football into chess. Or maybe it was something more ineffable, the courage to attempt the unexpected, to prioritize beauty alongside effectiveness. Francescoli's European odyssey continued after his transformative season in Marseille, as he ventured to the tactical battlegrounds of Serie A. The Italian chapter of his career, however, proved somewhat anticlimactic. In a league dominated by physical play, the space that Francescoli needed to weave his magic often vanished. His elegance remained, but the statistical impact diminished. As the calendar turned to 1994, and with his 33rd birthday approaching, Francescoli made the decision that would provide the perfect epilogue to his storied career, a return to River Plate. Many expected this homecoming to be a nostalgic farewell tour, a chance for Argentine fans to pay their respects before El Príncipe gracefully exited the stage. Francescoli, however, had scripted a different ending for himself. What followed wasn't the gentle descent into retirement that many anticipated, but rather an astonishing renaissance. At an age when most players have already hung up their boots or accepted diminished roles, Francescoli reclaimed his throne with breathtaking authority. The 1995 season became his masterpiece, a campaign in which he was once again crowned as Argentina's best player, a remarkable 11 years after first winning the award. This domestic recognition was amplified by a second South American Player of the Year award, confirming his continental dominance had returned undiminished. These individual accolades, impressive as they were, merely framed his crowning achievement, guiding a youthful, inexperienced River Plate side with his veteran wisdom to the league title, controlling matches with the same grace that had captivated Zidane a decade earlier. The culmination came with the Copa Libertadores triumph that had eluded him in his first stint at River, finally added to his collection. This victory wasn't merely the addition of a missing trophy. It was validation that Francescoli's approach to football, prioritizing technique, intelligence, and creativity, could conquer at the highest level, even as physical prowess faded. Football occasionally crafts moments of perfect narrative. In the 1996 Intercontinental Cup final in Tokyo, destiny arranged such a moment. Enzo Francescoli's River Plate facing Zinedine Zidane's Juventus. The master and the apprentice, the inspiration and the inheritor finally sharing the same pitch but on opposite sides. Before this fateful encounter, someone informed Francescoli about the depth of Zidane's admiration, how this rising French star had studied his every move in Marseille, had shaped his own game in Francescoli's image, had even named his firstborn son after him. "I was stunned when I found out about that," Francescoli would later recall, genuine surprise in his voice. "To think that a player of his caliber would see something in my game worth emulating. That's why I gave him my shirt after that match." This wasn't merely a jersey exchange, it was a symbolic passing of the torch, an acknowledgement of a spiritual lineage that transcended nations and continents. Though Juventus claimed a narrow 1-0 victory that day, the result seemed almost secondary to the deeper story unfolding on the pitch. At 35, Francescoli was in the twilight of his magnificent career. At 24, Zidane stood on the threshold of greatness, about to begin his ascent to the pinnacle of world football. In that Tokyo stadium, as they traded shirts and respect, the invisible thread connecting these two artists became momentarily visible for all to see. the sublime legacy of El Príncipe living on through the magic of Zidane. When judging the greatness of a footballer, very occasionally a player makes you look beyond the numbers and statistics and instead take a view of the way they played the game and the legacy they left behind for future players. Francescoli was such a player, making the game look effortless while moving around the pitch with an almost balletic beauty. His vision wasn't measured in assists, his influence not captured in goals scored. Instead, his greatness lives on in the imaginations he sparked, the possibilities he revealed, and in the artistic approach to football he championed. Coupled with honours at club and international level, Enzo Francescoli left a legacy admired by many, but perhaps his greatest achievement was inspiring a shy boy from Marseille who would himself become a legend. Just ask Zinedine Zidane, who carried El Príncipe's elegance into a new generation, ensuring that Francescoli's artistry would continue to inspire long after his own playing days had ended.